Thank you for joining us for the replay of Statewide Collaboration, Everyone Wins. With multiple Down syndrome associations throughout each state, it's easy to stick to your territory and go on with business as usual. In this presentation, Ohio Down Syndrome Association leaders share the impact of how having regular, scheduled meetings as a group can lead to positive outcomes. No matter what size your DSA is, there's a lot to gain by working together to strategize for the interest of all families impacted by Down syndrome within your state. In this presentation, you'll gain ideas on possible advocacy initiatives with which collaboration can gain momentum and success. You'll gain ideas on how to resolve state-centric issues and educate families in the best way possible, and gain ideas on fundraising and marketing strategies that benefit all DSAs. Your presenters today are Kari Jones, President and CEO of Down Syndrome Association of Central Ohio, Toni Mulee, who is the Executive Director of the Upside of Downs of Northeast Ohio, and Renee Canfield, who is the Executive Director of Down Syndrome Association of Greater Toledo.
This is Renee again, and I'm just going to take you through the goals of this presentation. We want to make sure that everyone leaves here with some really solid takeaways. We know that based on every state, the relationship that you have with other Down syndrome associations, it looks different for everyone. But we want everyone to feel energized and know that you can come away with some things that you can really start implementing right away. You can see here, we think that advocacy initiatives in which collaboration can gain momentum and success, that is something that us in Ohio, we really focus on that. And we will give you some pointers on advocacy initiatives. Resolving state-centric issues and educate families in the best way possible. In Ohio, we have multiple statewide topics that will come up that kind of come out of the government hub, mostly in Columbus. And we try to come together as much as possible to see how certain things can get resolved and also how we can communicate those issues to our families. Additionally, explore marketing and fundraising strategies that benefit all DSAs. So we've been lucky enough to work together to identify partners that we can all work with in order to achieve our marketing and fundraising goals. And we hope the same for all of you as well. Lastly, we hope to share best practices that at least we feel that we've come up with in order to positively impact families statewide. All families in all states can be different for sure, but sometimes it's good to come together and see what might work best for families that reside in your state or in your region.
Even in Ohio, we've had some kind of missteps or just some opportunities where we've come together and then things with turnover and just changes have gone by the wayside and we've picked it back up. So I'm going to share a little bit about the history of an organization, or I guess a network that used to exist in Ohio called the Ohio Down Syndrome Advocacy Network. We referred to that as ODAN. As you guys know, we all love our acronyms. So that was initiated back in 2008, before my tenure here at DeSaco. And that was a collaboration with Marge Barnheiser here in Central Ohio, Janet Gora down in Cincinnati, and also Michelle Jones out at the Down Syndrome Association of the Valley was involved in that group. Of the existing association leaders that meet today, only Michelle Jones is the only kind of historian that's still working for the organization that was partnered with that organization back in the day. So I keep saying organization, but it was never formally a 501c3. It was just a group of the Down syndrome associations at the time that got together. you can see a little quote there from Janet Gora, but really that focus, as you could guess from the name, was to focus on legislative advocacy. So I think that's really important stuff, and that's certainly a primary focus of our group that meets now. But historically, the whole and sole function of the ODAN group was to focus on legislative advocacy. And so they would host breakfasts and luncheons with legislators, typically here in Columbus, since we're the capital. And just over time and with turnover and just different priorities within the different organizations, that group organically disbanded in 2012. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are now, which is really exciting. I started at DeSaco back in 2014, and about a month after I started, I attended DSAIA. And the first thing that we did that I can remember was getting together for leadership circles. So for those of you who have participated in leadership circles, I can't say enough great things about it, but really that was very inspirational for me to be able to network with other DSA leaders and just get together with them and just talk. So at that conference, I remember talking to Jim Hudson and a couple other leaders from Ohio saying we should really be doing this in Ohio. And then I left the conference and I didn't do anything, which can sometimes happen at conferences, right? You go and have these grandiose ideas. And so then the following year at the 2015 DSAIA, I was like, okay, I should really do this. We should really look at formalizing a group here. So I went to DSAIA's website, Global's website, NDSS's website, NDSC's website, and really looked at all of the associations that have ever had a history in Ohio and sent them emails or calls to invite them to our first ever meeting that we had in May of 2015. And we have pretty much been hosting here in Columbus quarterly meetings ever since. I would say that on average, we're probably meeting about 3 times a year. And of the Ohio associations, the logos listed at the bottom of your screen there are the different organizations who are regularly attending those meetings. It's not to say that there aren't other associations, very little ones, sometimes out of the county boards of developmental disabilities that exist, but these are the 6 who are in regular attendance.
So this is Toni. I'm going to share some of the logistics of our process when we got started getting together. And the first thing that we did was, as Kari mentioned, we started by getting the full list of associations, and that's something that we are recommending that you do. So you want to check out the State Attorney General's website, and of course go to DSAIA, NDSS, etc., to make sure that you do have a complete list of the other associations in your state. Next, send out an invitation and general vision for the group. So for us, Ohio is a great place geographically for our groups to meet because it's a pretty small state. None of us have to drive more than 2.5 or 3 hours to get to one another. Obviously, there are states where this is not going to work as well. So I think one of the things you're going to have to ask yourself is, can you all meet in person? And if so, how often can those meetings take place? But when you do send out the invitation and the vision for the group, then you can determine where you will meet and how long the meetings will last. We do meet for around 4 hours every time our group gets together, so that none of us are leaving, in the middle of the night to get down to Columbus. So we usually get in around 10. We do have a working lunch, and then we pretty much are done by 2 p.m. so that we all can get back to our homes. It's important to identify a point person, and that is obviously typically the host, and that's Kari for our groups. So Kari will typically send out a question email asking us what are the topics that you all are interested in discussing. She sends out reminders, so it's very easy for us to make sure that we are, when we are meeting, that we are really using our time very valuably. And then at the meeting, we determine our goals and priorities, and we always try to establish the meeting frequency. And again, that is going to vary by area. So one of the first things that we did was we took a look at the Ohio map and made sure that all 88 counties in Ohio were being covered by one of our groups. So we did have an early version of this map, but we revisited it when we first started getting together and made sure that we created it so that everybody was in agreement and that everybody was covering every area of the state. So what do we talk about? We talk about a number of issues every time we get together. We talk about programs and events, marketing and fundraising, advocacy and awareness, and research and medical outreach. So every time that we are getting together, we do, as I said before, suggest topics. We talk about strengths and weaknesses, threats and opportunities for each organization. And as we get to talking about all of these things, we find out the similarities that we have, and we are able to help one another as we are talking through these issues. One of the main topics of conversation is the buddy walk. And one of the things that we also try to do is we try to bring together some of our staff members as well. So we met once earlier this year, and at that meeting we brought our buddy walk coordinators to that meeting. They met with us and then they met separately as well. So the buddy walk is obviously a huge endeavor for all of our organizations, and it's sharing best practices in what we are doing for the buddy walk that I think has helped all of us continue to grow. Some of the questions that we are answering when we are talking about programs, events, and I'm sure everyone has this one, is to charge or not to charge. So that's something that we are always sharing information about. We also talk about the successes or areas of opportunity for any programming that we're either doing now, maybe we've done in the past, or that we're thinking about doing. We do collaborate on some events. Last year, Columbus had signing times come in, and our organization, the Upside of Downs, was able to be a sponsor and invite some of our families down for that event. So we do collaborate in that way. And then we also share information about the events that we are having so that our families in other areas can take advantage of them. It's easy for a family in Renee's area to come to our area, and it's just as easy for our families to go down to Kari's area. So the fact that we're able to provide this additional programming for our families by sharing what we are doing throughout the state really makes an impact on our families.
This is Renee again. This is a fun topic for me to talk about, and when we did this presentation at DSAIA, I kind of started off by taking a show of hands to see how many people get nervous or uneasy about the idea of sharing a donor or sharing a sponsor. You could probably comment with that right now, but I have a feeling that for many people, that idea is a little nerve-wracking, and you think, well, why would I want to share someone who's giving my organization money? It's hard enough to raise money for just us. So why would we open that up to others? I've been in fundraising for nearly 10 years in one way or another, and I know that when we started to talk about this with all the Ohio Down syndrome associations, I think I felt that way too. I felt like, why would we collaborate in this aspect? Does it really make sense? But I must say that this is one of the things about our partnership that makes me the most proud, is the way that we've been able to come together. And I think it kind of started with a few. When you look here at the partnerships with these companies that we have, I think it started both with Little Caesars and Walmart in a sense. The Little Caesars partnership started in Toledo with local franchise owners, and they really took us under their wings and chose us as their local nonprofit of choice, which is a big deal in Toledo because Toledo has an extremely high number of nonprofits per capita here. So we are constantly competing for funds. We are constantly competing for volunteer time. And the fact that Little Caesars came in, they wanted to completely pay for all of our Buddy Walk t-shirts in exchange for getting our logo, their logo pretty prominently on the sleeve and on the back. They paid for all of the shirts. They all came together and kind of wrote small checks that came toward the total. They included us on their billboard advertising. So they run a digital campaign, coincidentally right in the fall, which is perfect timing for our Buddy Walk. Our Buddy Walk is usually in October, so it works out really well for us. And they also do little box topper flyers on all the pizzas that are given out about the last month leading up to our Buddy Walk. And then they come out and the day of the event and they bring or make fresh pizzas on site and hand free pizza out to all of our attendees. So that partnership is amazing for us. And not long after that started, I think in the second or third year, the area marketing manager approached me and asked if we have a Down Syndrome Association in the Cleveland area. And I said I had to explain to him how we're all independent 501c3s, but many of us have affiliations with some national organizations that bind us together. But I said he's more than welcome to reach out to them. And so I reached out to Toni first just to see how she'd feel about that, meaning would they accept, a partnership like that? Do they have an already existing relationship with any other pizza shops in their area? So she was definitely open to that, and they came in and I think underwrote the appearance of Madeline Stewart for their Buddy Walk. So that was their contribution to the Upside of Down's Buddy Walk that particular year. And then I believe from there, they went on to the New York City Buddy Walk. And then, I know that it looks a little bit different across the country, but that's really how it started. And we're very proud of that, our ability to come together and share the wealth, if you will. And then also Walmart. So that was, I believe that partnership was started at the Down Syndrome Association of the Valley. And they do offer grants, but just as important, they also offer volunteer bodies. So they'll have employees or associates come out and work the event. And I believe for DSAV, that's one of their strongest partnerships. So Lindsay, at the time, she was able to share that with us and see who the regional reps were. So sometimes you can have an in like that and see, okay, we have a great relationship with our local Walmart affiliates. Can they link us up with any area marketing managers across the rest of the state? So that is in fact what she did, and a few of our other groups were able to benefit from Walmart partnerships. Lamar, I believe that relationship started either in Cleveland or Columbus, and they shared with what go ahead.
Cleveland.
And then DeSaco now benefits from billboard advertising through Lamar. We didn't jump on that just because with Little Caesars working us into their marketing package already, that wasn't something we necessarily needed, but I know that they do great things for Cleveland and Columbus. And then lastly, First Energy. So I'm going to brag about Kari a little bit here, but I think it was about a year ago, she came to me and she asked if we had if First Energy or Toledo Edison, which is a utility company, if they were a donor of ours. And I said, no, they were not. I'm fully aware of all that they do for the community and what a great company they are. But she had a connection through a connection, and she not only set up a meeting or aided in setting up a meeting between me and the regional president, but she drove up from Columbus to meet with us. And it was, I think that just spoke volumes about the kind of person that Kari is. And she always has a team attitude, and she didn't benefit from that introduction at all. They did become a sponsor of ours last year at an event, and we've continued that partnership to this day. So I just think that sense of camaraderie speaks volumes, and it's something that energizes me on a continuous basis. Additionally, community health charities, I think we were talking about this during one of our in-person meetings about additional ways that we can raise funds that maybe don't take up a lot of time. So many of you know, I think I talked about this with some great people that I met at DSAIA this year. Most of us may not necessarily be United Way charities, meaning they may not have us on their list of preferred charities for workplace payroll deductions. But that does not mean that there might not be some local organizations that are 501c3s that are also workplace giving campaign federations, such as community health charities, that you can become a member of. And essentially through groups like this, you can get additional exposure with companies that you may not have otherwise had a chance to get into. And you can give speaking engagements, you can bring brochures, you can engage potential volunteers. And if they want to choose you to give a few dollars off of each paycheck too, then that's definitely a bonus. But that was discussed at one of the meetings, and I know that not all of the Ohio Down Syndrome associations were aware of organizations like that do exist to help some smaller nonprofits with us, or that have human services related missions. Additionally, something that we are thrilled to share with everyone is that through the Ohio license plate sales that I think they began last April in 2017, a portion of each, the sale of each license plate goes back to a fund, and essentially we were able to split that pot of $7,500, and that wasn't even a full calendar year. So we came together and we were not sure, honestly, how we can best spend that money, whether we should collaborate and join together and do one big event, kind of like what Toni was mentioning, how we can do that. Sometimes we'll come together and we'll co-sponsor events that all of our families can come to. But just to get us started, we decided just to split the pot evenly, and then kind of go from there and reassess after this year is over if it's going to make sense for us to continue doing so, or if we want to keep it all together and then go on in one big event that all of our families can really benefit from.
Can I just add a couple of things before you flip over? Renee?
Of course, yes.
This is Kari. A couple of things for those of you on with us today. Renee talked about this, but just to be clear, community health charities is something that anyone in the country could access. So if you are not a part of community health charities, you should definitely, when you get off the webinar today, look into joining that. There is some paperwork that you have to complete in order to be considered as a beneficiary of funds, but it is workplace giving. So people just deduct money out of their paycheck and they partner. Their businesses, their companies are partnered with community health charities, and community health charities is really the liaison that then gives us the funds in a quarterly check. In Columbus and Central Ohio, we get almost $30,000 a year through this network. And so, I mean, it's significant for us, but a lot of government organizations and businesses, so like the Attorney General's office, for example, has this partnership with community health charities. Lots and lots of different government offices have relationships there. So I would definitely encourage anyone that's on with us today to look into that if you haven't already, because it's a pretty easy way to potentially bring in some pretty good revenue. Also, just kind of overarching about this whole marketing and fundraising piece, I've found personally that it's really helpful with any donor that I'm talking with to say that we partner and collaborate as a state. That means a lot to donors when they're talking with you and they want to know that you're working together to do the best you can do, that you're trying to educate each other on best practices. It's just kind of like people are typically very surprised and then happy to hear that. And I think that that's helped me leverage just even having conversations with local donors, not to mention all the benefits that we've seen in partnering and sharing that Renee already listed. Okay.
Thank you for jumping in there, Kari. I also wanted to say that actually the umbrella organization that Greater Toledo is involved with is called Community Shares of Northwest Ohio. So even if you Google them and look them up, they may not necessarily be called community health charities or community shares, but there's usually groups like that, you know, that are, the best way I can say is similar to United Way, but not United Way, right?
Right. Without all of the hassle.
There you go.
Okay. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the license plate that Renee mentioned, but also I want to talk about some of the successes that we've had working together as a state in terms of legislation. So back in 2014, our associations worked together to collaboratively advocate and pass the Down Syndrome Information Act that was signed into law, and featured in the picture to the right there is a group of us. Most of the associations, I believe, are represented in some way, and that was when our governor signed that bill into law in December of 2014. So that law, as many of you know who've likely attended DSAIA conferences and worked on medical outreach, that law requires that medical professionals in Ohio, when they're giving a Down syndrome diagnosis, they also have to share resources about local associations, facts about Down syndrome, and all of that stuff. So it's really critical stuff. It's helped all of us in the state, I think I can speak for everybody, with our medical outreach efforts, because it gives us a leg to stand on when we're talking with medical professionals. So that was a really big thing that we all worked together on. Also, stable accounts, that's something that, you know, at the federal level that passed, and as we began seeing how that translated state by state, in Ohio, ABLE became stable accounts. And so we worked on getting that passed through our state really quickly. I believe that we were the first state in the country to have these ABLE accounts available to Ohioans. And that was a pretty big deal for our state. And it's one of the most successful programs, I think, in the country, but go Buckeyes. Anyway, so that's a big deal. And then currently we're working on an organ transplant non-discrimination bill here in Ohio. And that's been really helpful in terms of our coordination of, that's not a Down syndrome specific bill, that's a developmental disability specific bill. So it's really non-specific, I guess, in that way. And so as we're working on that advocacy and we're submitting testimony, it's sometimes more helpful for us to submit testimony on behalf of all of the Down syndrome associations, and then bring in some other disability advocacy organizations too. Because if it was just Down syndrome specific and all 6 of us are submitting testimony, but we're not collaborating with those other disability organization advocacy partners, then it wouldn't maybe be as effective. So there have been times where I will submit testimony, or someone else in our group will submit testimony to the state on behalf of all of the associations. And again, I think it sends a stronger message to say, you know, all 6 organizations are covering all 88 counties that we serve. So we're representing all of Ohio. And so when we're working on this advocacy, it really just helps us have that stronger message. Additionally, Ohio supported Medicaid expansion a few years ago, and that was great for us. It was great for our families in terms of more coverage through Medicaid. But as things have been happening at the federal level, and as our state budget has been up for review, there have been times when the state has looked at cutting Medicaid dollars, which would impact our families. So we've been able to come together to work on that advocacy, and I think it's been helpful for all of us to be on the same page. So sometimes when we're doing a Facebook post, a call to action, we will tag all of our associations in our state so that, you know, the Miami Valley Down Syndrome Association can see that post, and then they can just reshare it. So it helps us with streamlining our messaging, but also just taking a little extra work out of it. Instead of reinventing the wheel, we can just share that advocacy off of each other's Facebook pages or emails or whatever. And we don't mind doing that with each other, which I think has just made our lives all a lot easier, to be honest. In terms of something really big that we had, as Renee mentioned, it launched in April of last year. We had a Down syndrome awareness license plate that came to fruition. We began working on it in the fall of 2016, and then it had to work through, in Ohio, it had to work through our legislative system in order to be officially recognized as a state license plate. And I'm sure every state operates differently, but for us, that's how it looked in Ohio. And Dina, I'm not sure, are we, or Renee, are we able to show the video behind this?
We can try to do that if you want.
Okay.
Click on it.
Should I just try to do it through the clicking? I'll click the, okay.
So this is a shared website that I manage, downsyndromeohio.org, that we have, so that this website is listed on the bottom of every license plate.
Have you seen it? Down syndrome awareness has a new look, and it all begins with love. Symbolized by the heart shape, it's the love that people with Down syndrome feel their family, friends, and community with, and the love they receive in return. There are 3 hearts and 3 different colors. They represent the 3 copies of the 21st chromosome that make up Down syndrome. Since that little something extra is all or part of a 21st chromosome, the number 21 has a prominent place in this symbol. The rest of the symbol is made when 2 of the hearts come together to form a plus sign, a representation of the positive impact people with Down syndrome make in the world, and a reminder of the importance of inclusion. It's love, it's extraordinary, it's positivity. It's the new look of Down syndrome awareness.
So that video was something that we created because we wanted to make sure that if we had our new branding out there on our license plate, that we were able to communicate to the public and our stakeholders what that branding, why that branding is what it is. And so for that particular project, we pulled together parents in Central Ohio who have children with Down syndrome, who also are designers. And we pulled together a work group with multiple different concepts, I guess you could say, different logos. And I took those logos to one of our Ohio Down Syndrome Association meetings and said to everybody, okay, guys, you know, which branding do you like? Please vote on it and we'll rank them, and then we will put out there whatever we all agree on. So while I kind of spearheaded this project, it was certainly collaborative, and we got feedback from everyone throughout the state and said, okay, what branding do we want to go with? And we made this because we didn't see anything that existed at the national scale that necessarily resonated with our members. So you could do, you know, whatever you want. I mean, if you wanted to do something like this, you could certainly use whatever design you wanted. But for us, we felt like we needed to create something that resonated with our families, and this is what we came up with. So I'm sure every license plate in every state is different. For us, we have the opportunity to put either a tagline or a website at the bottom of our license plate. So we wanted to use that to our advantage. And if you go to downsyndromeohio.org, it's really not meant to be a place where you stay for very long. It's meant to be more of a passageway to one of the other Ohio associations. So the hope is that if you were to visit this website and you had a loved one with Down syndrome or were connected to somebody with Down syndrome and you didn't realize that a local association existed in your area, you could go to that site and find a map, that state map that we showed you earlier, and you could then link up with someone that's in your area that you might have not known even existed before. So that site also shares some basic facts about Down syndrome, and you can feel free to check it out after the webinar. But for us, that site is really not meant to be a place where people go on the reg. It's just meant to be a place that you can learn some more information and hopefully get more connected with your local association. Okay.
Okay, so this is Toni again. So one of the areas that is of great importance that we discuss at our meetings is operations. Certainly not the most exciting topic of conversation, but we all can learn from one another, and we do have varying sizes of organizations. However, there's a lot of value in us all sharing our experiences. Certainly one of the main topics that we discuss is staff management. Strategic planning is always something that we discuss as well. Membership referrals is an interesting one. As we showed in an earlier slide, the map that we have of Ohio covers every county in Ohio by one of us. But sometimes there's a family that may be closer geographically, even though to say Columbus, even though it's officially a Cleveland area county. So we do collaborate, and if it makes sense, you know, happy to refer families to partake in programming in other areas as well. And also, if we get a call from somebody who is in one of those service areas that we do not cover, we want to make sure that they have the information for that particular Down syndrome association, so they know how to communicate and get in touch with them to learn more about their programming. You know, we talk about how we record expenses, board issues, you name it. There are a variety of topics that we discuss. And as I said, we're all benefiting from those discussions. We can all provide value in what we're sharing.
I stole this off a website. Can you tell? Go ahead, Renee.
It makes me laugh every time. This is Renee again. So we want to talk about camaraderie, and we kind of walked you guys through logistics and kind of the down and dirty business side of why we feel like collaborating with statewide organizations is important. But sometimes just like good old fashioned feeling of connectedness and like you're on the same team as other people Even though some distance separates you, I feel like there's a lot to be said about it. You can see here hashtag awkward family Ohio DSA photo that was taken at one of our meetings throughout the year, and we were able to know that we were launching the license plate program, and you can see Lindsay brought some delicious cookies for all of us to enjoy. Oh no, it was Lindsay, yes. She was able to have these license plate cookies custom made for us, and it was just so special. I mean, we look a little cheesy there, but it was a good feeling to know that it was truly a collaborative effort to make that a reality. And it was a good feeling to know that, you know, the efforts that will raise awareness and raise funds for families across our state, it would not have happened if we didn't, you know, get through some things to be able to come together and make it possible. So that's what that photo is. And then DSAV and Upside of Downs came together at a Canton Charge game, and you can see they co-manned a table and had both of their presentation boards up, and they were able to sell 50-50 tickets together. So what a great way to, again, raise awareness and raise funds together. Pretty neat. So we knew when we were coming up with this presentation that with the three of us, we didn't want to leave any other voices out from our colleagues across the state who had something to say. So you can see here that that this leader really feels like when we come together, it's to remind each of us that we're not on an island. And even though we just get together in person 3 or 4 times a year, there's so much that comes out of it. And I know that our takeaways may kind of vary with how each of us view what we saw as the most important kind of things that our organizations will benefit coming out of it. But it makes a difference, and it is a complete and total benefit to each of our organizations, regardless of the size. So Willie here, he is probably the newest of the group. He took over the executive director role at Miami Valley Down Syndrome Association relatively recently, within the past year. And I think that he came in probably not knowing what to expect, because our group was already up and running. We've been meeting regularly for the past 3 years. So he probably didn't really know what to expect, didn't know what he was getting into, but you can tell that it's beneficial to him because he's able to more effectively and efficiently navigate challenging situations, because when he's able to spend some time and come together and learn from all of the different groups, he's able to take things away that make sense to the greater Dayton area. I know personally, my little personal anecdote, when I started with Down Syndrome Association of Greater Toledo in April of 2015, it was an overwhelming time for me because I was a part-time, and I still am really, a part-time executive director, no other staff, small volunteer base. And I didn't really know where to start, but it wasn't long after that I got that first email from Kari. And I'm such an email pack rat that I surfaced that initial email and I had to show it to her for giggles. But I felt encouraged just by that first email of knowing that there are others throughout the state who may not be in the exact same situation as I was with our organization in Greater Toledo, but who may be willing to listen to what I have to say and provide feedback for, and maybe some suggestions for things that I could do. And I have to tell you, that was definitely the case. They have given me so much inspiration and energy, And I know without a doubt that because of some of those key takeaways from our in-person meetings, DSAGT has been able to grow our budget from $80,000 in 2015 to $150 by the end of 2017. Without a doubt, it is largely in part due to just knowing that I'm going to meet with them 3 or 4 times a year. We're going to be able to, pick up the phone or send a quick email. And it's that peace of mind knowing that someone has your back. And although we don't always look at things the exact same way, we may not always agree on things, we understand that the greater good and our common denominator are the families that we serve. And in the end, that's all that matters.
Okay, so we know you've just been like waiting to type in your questions until now, but if you have questions, we would love to answer those for you.
You can go ahead and type those in. I do have a couple of questions on the website. Like, the website's basically a place for people to get to any of the organizations if they are just looking for that information. So, or looking for Ohio Down syndrome information. So, what did you guys do as far as, who's holding the domain name? Did you decide to do something, separately on a different website? Could a state that decided they wanted to get this collaborative effort together, how could they emulate that, I guess?
I'll take that one. So this is Kari. I manage that website. I bought the domain for, I think, like, $30 or something like that. And in Ohio, there is ohioautism.org or something like that. And that's actually was the inspiration for putting a website on our license plate, because we could have very easily just had it say Down syndrome awareness on the bottom of the plate. But we really wanted to bring added value to that and not just raise awareness, but really raise awareness for what we're doing in each area of the state. So, and that we're a resource to families. So I manage that. I would say that we probably invest $100 a year, something like that, because there's some monthly small fees. We use Squarespace for that, to manage that, and that's our platform, and it's a really, really easy platform to use to create a website. So if someone's saying, I'm not really that great at building a website, this has templates that are, I'm horrible with technology, Dina can vouch for that, and I can manage Squarespace and that platform very easily. In terms of what we have on the site, we do in our quarterly meetings, we'll talk about, okay, what advocacy things that are statewide do we want to have on there? So I'll review with everybody in the meetings and say, okay, this is currently what exists. Is everyone okay with this? Should we be adding more? Should we be doing less? That's really the only thing that is changing on that website, is we want people to be able to see what some of the statewide issues are that we're working on. And so we'll put that on there. But other than that, there isn't a whole lot to it and to managing that. And that's really helpful for someone like me. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's very interesting. So, sorry, so when Melissa said that I sounded like I was really far away, it's because I had my microphone from my headset up back behind my ear. So, so there's another question. Can other states use your license plate design? Can it become a nationally accepted plate to order?
We would love that. Personally, when I met with our work group here in Ohio, in Central Ohio, with the parents who are local, that was their dream, is for this to be something that was used around the country. So we do not have, you know, we're not just in the same way that we're talking about collaboration in our state. I think that we could all agree that we want to see that nationally, which is why we're doing this webinar to begin with. So if you wanted to, I mean, I would probably, you know, you can feel free to email me or Dina to get more information so I could send you everything in a more formal, you know, InDesign kind of version of it. And I think that we, you know, we're happy to do that. Someone asked that during the presentation at DSAIA, and, you know, we said the same thing. I think California was looking at it, and we would love that. I think that would be great, because there are lots and lots of different branding or logos or whatever you want to call it that are out there. But this is one that we felt created a lot of meaning.
There's a question I didn't get confirmation on, but I think I know what she's talking about. Have you ever collaborated for state funding?
Like government money?
So that's what I assumed, because we know you collaborate throughout the state for funding. Yes, she says yes, for government funding.
I wouldn't say that for our associations directly we have, because we haven't, but I would say that we've advocated together, kind of talked about Medicaid, and that's and the state budget, because in Ohio there's the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, and that's the bucket of money that our families access for the most part for their services that they utilize. And so we've all come together to advocate in behalf of growing that budget and not making cuts and all of that stuff. So in hindsight, I wish that we had, for our medical outreach and that Down Syndrome Information Act, I wish we had all put in there that we each needed money to be able to fund the resources that we provide to healthcare professionals, but we didn't. So, you know, hindsight's always 20/20 there, but
that's a great idea in terms of government grant funding, you know, to kind of pitch in and do one big proposal. We just haven't crossed that bridge yet.
Yeah, I think Toni said that she loves writing grants, right, Toni? So
I do.
So here's a question for you guys, because Ohio's not, you know, not a small state, but it's not probably the largest state that in the United States that we are probably, even that people that are on the call right now or on the webinar right now. So you guys have kind of set this as a central location in Columbus, but have you thought about moving it around the state to make it easier for, I mean, or to, you know, to kind of make sure no one has to drive every time? Or
Toni or Renee, you should probably answer this, because I'm lucky that I'm the host. So,
well, I think we've had brief discussions about it. This is Toni, but it just makes perfect sense at this point to meet centrally in Columbus, because Cincinnati and Cleveland are pretty far away from each other. So if we were to have something far north or far south, it would make it difficult for us to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish within one single day.
Cool. And you guys meet for how many hours in that day?
We meet from 10 to 2.
Okay.
And we do work through lunch.
Okay.
But it's a delicious lunch, so it's worth it.
Are you doing cross-state collaboration with other advocacy groups regarding legislative advocacy? This comes from from Nancy in California, but like they have CDAC. Are you going cross advocacy, cross disability groups?
I would say that with the organ transplant non-discrimination legislation that we're working on, we are working with Autism Speaks Ohio on that. So, you know, in that instance, it is more of a statewide impact, but we don't have like a formal Ohio Down Syndrome associations are a part of, you know, some panel or some work group or something like that.
All right. Any more questions? Last chance. While I'm thanking our presenters, you will have one more opportunity to type in those questions. I'm curious to see if anyone just wants to say, hey, we're thinking about, this sounds like a good idea. I've got some ideas to start the process. We're always absolutely willing to help you at DSAIA to find meeting times for you guys and in rooms where you can meet if you want to meet up there. And then, of course, we got NDSE coming up in July. Kind of hoping that my Texas friends that are on the call today are interested in probably talking about some type. We did have this a little while before I left Texas. It's not happening now, but hopefully I can get it reboosted. Thank you so much to Kari and to Renee and to Toni for presenting this for us again, and we'll put the webinar in the recording in the archive coming up in a few weeks. But for those who are on today, last chance, we got some thank yous. Do we have any more questions before we're a few minutes over, but I feel like we're doing pretty good on time. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon, and thank you so much, Kari, Renee, Toni. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, everyone.
OH.